Hey, my name is Jeremy Arsenault, and today I want to ask this question. Can we trust the Gospels? Can we trust the Gospels? We're going to answer that question today. I don't know if you've ever played the game Telephone, where you whisper in someone's ear a sentence that you've come up with, pass that phrase down, pass it down, pass it down. And it comes back, and it's just this ridiculously sounds nothing like the original word that you gave to that first person. And what's crazy is the longer the line is of people playing telephone, the more ridiculous that final version of what you said comes out as. And I don't know if you've ever played that game, but imagine if the story of Jesus worked like that. Passed down for decades and decades before anyone wrote it down. And if that were true, you'd expect a lot of confusion, contradictions, and maybe even some legends sneaking in over time. But here's the amazing thing. When we look at the Gospels, especially Matthew, Mark, and Luke, what we call the Synoptic Gospels, we find something totally different. We find historical accounts written so close to the actual events and by people so connected to eyewitnesses that the telephone game theory falls apart. The first thing I want us to know is that the Gospels were written early, and the timing really matters. If the Gospels were written decades, maybe even a lifetime after Jesus lived, then yeah, legends could creep in. But evidence shows that these accounts were written before 70 AD, within the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. That year, 70 AD, was when Romans destroyed the Jewish temple, just like Jesus said would happen. And get this, none of the Gospels mentioned that massive event. That would have been front page news in the ancient world, especially since it was a direct fulfillment of Jesus's own prophecy. So why on earth wouldn't they include it? Well, simple, because it hadn't happened yet. That silence tells us that the Gospels were written while people were still alive who saw what Jesus did, heard what he said, and could correct anything false that was written. Another thing that we should know is that Luke and Acts actually connect even more dots to when this was written. Luke gives us this clue. He wrote two books, the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts. Acts ends with Paul still alive, still preaching, but we know Paul was executed around 64 AD. And so if Acts was written before Paul's death, then Luke's Gospels had to be written even earlier, probably in the 50s or 60s. And so that means the story of Jesus was written down within 30 years of his resurrection. Just think about it like this. That's like asking someone today to write something about 9/11. All right. It's still fresh. It's still remembered. You can't just post made up things about an event like that. There are witnesses around the world that would call forward like, "Hey, no, that's not what happened. I was there. I remember." You wouldn't be able to make up those stories the same. The third point is real people equals real memories. And so Matthew walked with Jesus. Mark was mentored by Peter, one of the inner circle, and Luke carefully interviewed eyewitnesses and verified every detail. These weren't random religious storytellers. They were journalists of their day, documenting a movement that changed the world. Luke even starts his gospel by saying he carefully investigated everything from the beginning. In other words, I didn't make this up. I checked my sources. So why it matters? So why does all this matter? Because our faith isn't built on blind belief. It's built on reliable testimony. The Gospels aren't myths, they're memories. They're eyewitness accounts of the most important moment in human history. When you read about Jesus calming the storm, healing the sick, raising the dead, you're not reading a story from someone who invented to inspire faith. It's not a story someone invented to inspire faith. You're reading a record from people who staked their lives on what they saw. And so the next time you open your Bible and read the Gospels, remember you're holding history that's been tested, verified, and preserved by people who were there. The Synoptic Gospels don't just tell us what happened, they remind us that our faith stands on solid ground. And if God was faithful to preserve his word so clearly, you can trust him to be faithful with your life too.